of today's show here. Jason Ross with you. Carmichael Dave on vacation. He's back with us next week. But as promised, you see him now on your screen. The voice of the Kings, one of the voices of the NBA as well. Mark Jones, who was on the call last night and has been bouncing all around Las Vegas and Summer League. Jason Ross here. Mark, good morning. How are you?
Good, man. Good. Just finished my morning workout and man, it's hot out here. Didn't I just see you here in Las Vegas?
I was there. Made it back.
Bounce? You
I left on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, got out Sunday. Watched a couple games and got back. But what was the workout today? What were you doing?
A little core and then just a little 2-mile run. Just a circuit around the hotel, the Virgin Hotel here. Got to get it before it gets really hot. You know what I mean? Just
you ran outside.
Yeah, I can't do treadmills for too long, man, because they're brutal on my knees, and I just hate stale gym air. I like being outside when I get a chance.
Yeah, makes sense.
Even though it's 103 in the shade.
I know already. Well, the Kings have been hot, Mark. I know you've watched them and you called the game last night, but I've been saying about Summer League, you go there to evaluate the young guys to see what you potentially have. And, oh, by the way, along the way, maybe you get some wins and you can play for a championship. The Kings are kind of checking all those boxes right now.
Yeah, huge. I love the overall style of play. I mean, I forget what the total amount of turnovers was by the end of the night against Phoenix, but they flipped them a million times, it felt like especially in the second half, just the defensive pressure, the 94 feet pickups. The half-court defense was solid, contesting shots. With Scott Perry taking over as general manager, the team got together right on the first night prior to training camp for the Summer League. And, each of the people kind of spoke and talked about setting the tone from now. It starts beginning, now in terms of setting the way that they want to be as an organization and accountable, tough, buy-in, all those things. And I think we're seeing some of that manifesting itself on the court, even here in Summer League. It's never too early to reset your culture. And winning here in Las Vegas, I don't think can be overstated. That, it's important and it's showing.
What's interesting is I was saying this earlier, generally, and you've done this a long time, as have I, but it's like, your veterans can kind of be the culture starters. They're going to teach the young guys the way of the league and the ropes and the grind of the NBA. But I'm hoping there's a little bit of a flip of that too, Mark, where these young guys come in with a different energy, a different vibe, playing this 94 feet of defense. And, that's not something that Derozan and Lavine and maybe Monk have been known for. So, I'm anxious to see how these guys are fused together with the knowledge and talent of the core veterans with these young guys.
Yeah, the blend is going to be very interesting to see how it kind of unfolds on the court. And, it's basically teaching some old dogs new tricks, right? And Scott Perry has said that, he wants volunteers, not hostages. And if you really want to be here, then I think ultimately professional players buy in. And if they don't, then the adjustment is made and you keep moving the ship forward. We're going to see what that willingness looks like. And, sometimes it's not even about willingness. Sometimes it's about if you can do it or not, and whether it's viable to play a certain style with certain people. And that's all to be figured out. And we'll see that beginning the middle of October in training camp and preseason.
Yeah, talk with Mark Jones, the voice of the Kings, TV voice. Also, you see him all over the NBA. Was on the call last night. Going to go over a couple of the individuals. And you were talking to me. I talked to you after the second game against the Bulls, and you were telling me a story that you ended up sharing as well on the air last night, which I'm glad Kings fans heard, but about Devin Carter and his dad. You had a flight with him coming across country, and the father-son bond, the former player and son, and the work those two guys are getting in. I'd love you to share a little bit more about what you think that has done for Devin and even for both of them.
Yeah, I think Devin has learned that this is his year to, step on the accelerator and keep his foot down on it. After a really disjointed rookie season with the shoulder, he never really got untracked. So, late May, early June, he called Dad, and they had a conversation, and Dad was like, "Well, I'm gonna put my hands on you because I haven't had my hands on you to work with you since you went away to college to play for Frank Martin in South Carolina." And they got together early June, rented out an Airbnb in Phoenix and did two-a-days, and skill work in the morning for a couple of hours. Shooting in the afternoon, conditioning. Second week, very much the same, then leaning a little bit more towards conditioning. And it was interesting because AC, Anthony, his dad, told me that, said, "Mark, I pulled out a lot of my old Pat Riley drills that we did when I was with the Heat, things that would make players literally puke into garbage cans on the sidelines." And Devin was up to the challenge. And Anthony says, "Hey, my job here this summer is to make my son a point guard." He's never played point guard. We've heard Devin say that to the amassed media in Sacramento. And he's coming along. And, I think there's going to be probably a couple more sessions and phone calls and FaceTime calls with Dad and film review. And, Anthony has the year off this year because he was part of the purge of the coaching staff in Memphis. And he's looking forward to being a little bit more present and engaged in being able to try and help his son improve and become that, professional point guard, or at least learn the position a little bit better. But it was a very fruitful several weeks in Phoenix. And it was interesting. He said, "Mark," he said, he had one of his collegiate teammates there, so they could drill against each other at times and make it competitive. He said, "There was nothing else to do there. We were in a remote area. The young guys at times were, they had nothing but a pool table. So it was either pool or watching basketball video and breaking down tape." And he said, after a while, it was me getting more stir crazy than those young boys, because in their free time when they weren't watching basketball video and breaking down tape, millennials, right? It's on their phones and stuff. And he's old school. He's not about that. So it was time for him to bounce after several weeks. But it was a very productive time in the desert with his dad. And I think we've seen it pay off, especially in the last two games.
Yeah. I know last night when you had Scott Perry on the broadcast, I think he was quick to tell you that, look, there's no doubt we could tell he's NBA caliber defensively, guarding 1-2s, possibly 3s. It's more of that offensive game. But, whether he's a combo guard, whether they play him at some point and he's shooting the ball better, I don't know if it's confidence, if it's reps, maybe all of it. But I also did see him kind of holding that shoulder again a couple times last night. I don't know if there's something still lingering there or not.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't gotten any kind of medical update yet on him, but hopefully he's okay, and hopefully it's just a little nick because he needs to be on the court this year. He really does, and a little bit more time in Sacramento as opposed to Stockton, because there are minutes available at backup point guard behind Dennis Schroeder, and we saw Nique Clifford yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play some backup point guard. So that might be part of the minute split between those two guys at some point.
Yeah, well, let's go there next, Mark. Nique Clifford, talk about feel and fit and versatility. They're calling him the Swiss Army knife. I think it's perfect. Yeah. He looks the part. He's mature. He's obviously new to the NBA, but so far so good. Everything I've seen. What are your thoughts on Nique?
Yeah, plays with great pace at the offensive end. The nuance that really impressed me last night, beyond his great three-point shooting, was 3 of 3 from downtown, and his feel for the game, to see the court and pass, was several times Phoenix tried to, with their point guards, they tried to heat him up and pressure him. And, they were able to turn him a couple times, but, he had his head up, never had his back, and had to spin. So you invite the double team from the other side. They couldn't run and jump him, and he handled that pressure really well. So he had a crash course in NBA defensive pressure and being able to handle it, and acquitted himself extremely well. I love the way that he plays at both ends of the floor, and that's the way that the NBA is going now. It's a group of, you got to have a bunch of 6'5" to 6'7" guys on your team playing the wings, who play at both ends of the floor. If you look at Oklahoma City and Indiana, 2 teams that are in the finals. They got a bunch of those guys.
Yeah, Kings have been light on that. That's for sure. And then
Yeah.
A guy who didn't play last night, but I know you've seen him play. You were at the game the other day where Maxime Raynaud is booming voice can be heard throughout the gym in his communication, even if he's not playing. I know they've liked what they've seen. I'd love your opinion on what you've seen from Big Max.
Yeah, that was when I was at practice to hear him anchor the defense and be calling out, weak, strong. I got him. It was pretty impressive. And I love the fact that, just like Clifford, you have a 22, 23-year-old rookie who has the ability coming into the NBA to be a plug-and-play guy and contribute immediately because he's a little bit older. And I think I can envision the Kings using him like a hub. I mean, running some delay actions at the top of the lane and being able to make plays for himself and for teammates, and running those DHO actions and those zoom actions, and really cerebral. And I more than anything love a guy that I can speak French to too, having taken French for 9 years in school. So yeah, there's that too. But he shoots only player in collegiate basketball last year to average 20 and 10.
Yeah.
I like you said, his communication skill is elite too.
So as we look to, obviously the offseason isn't done. We're watching this team try to win as much as they can in the summer league. And then the last phase is continued summer development and Scott Perry's turn to see what else he can do with this roster. Schroeder's an addition. These picks are an addition. And then there's a lot of duplication in a season that, we all know coming off of it was a wild year, trading Fox, firing Mike Brown, Doug Christie coming in. I know they're going to try to get some continuity. It's an odd collection at times, but what's your early thought on what the roster makeup could look like and could turn out to be next year?
Yeah, I'm curious to see if any more dominoes fall. Obviously the Kuminga thing is kind of orbiting around potential roster moves. I'm not sure that the math works, the money works there, based on what Kuminga's camp is probably looking at their client getting. But, he's a very attractive piece. Some of the chatter I've heard out there a little bit, and I'm thinking about what price he might come at is, and this, some people will scoff at this, some people won't. When you look at his talents, Ben Simmons is still out there too, and a 6'10" guy that is NBA All-Defensive Team, a great passer and facilitator. He'd be great in the type of style that the Kings might want to run this year. And he's not another mouth to feed.
Yeah. More
importantly, at the offensive end. But I would guess that we're going to see probably, if I had to bet, the same roster that we're looking at right now, without any major tweaks before training camp.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. And I think, I'd be curious on your years of experience too, Mark, on when you have two players that are as good as they are in Zach Lavine and DeMar DeRozan that have had a couple different turns at this. It's not like they've been a failure, but it hasn't bloomed and blossomed as much as maybe you would think with two guys of their kind of talent. Do you have any, opinions on maybe why in Chicago and why here in Sacramento, the times they've been together, that two guys that are as good as they can be, but it just doesn't always gel together?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of truth to that, Jason. I would also say that their grade here in Sacramento is incomplete.
That's fair.
Because they haven't had a training camp together, gotten to know their teammates, and have pieces around them that they've gotten familiar with from day one. Doug took over on the fly last year. He's getting a training camp in. He's got veteran assistants around him, and they're going to get a chance to implement the way they want to play with DeMar and with Zach. And I think we can probably fully grade them on this year and see how it goes. But, the one thing about Zach and DeMar is that they're both very prideful people. I know them very well, especially, DeMar's very prideful. And nobody who's accomplished the number of All-Stars that those two guys have combined, I think it's 7 or 8 between them, wants to be the guy that gets pointed as it not working.
Right.
So, you know, I think there'll be a tremendous amount of buy-in from those two guys from what Doug asked from them this year. And I think it'll be a nice mix. I think the Kings are going to be very competitive in the Western Conference this year. I think Dennis Schroeder is a great piece for this team. I think, you know, we may have lacked every locker room needs a guy with a loose wire. Dennis got a loose wire, and I mean that coming from a place of love. I love Dennis, and he's very competitive, but he's not afraid to jam guys up when they need to be jammed up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a variable that this team might have been wanting a little bit in past years.
Yeah, for sure. I was curious too. I know you get to talk to a lot of different people. You're in the circles you're in, whether it's coaches, agents, players. You're talking a little bit earlier about Kuminga, and I know it's been a bad year to be a restricted free agent, the money and the apron and all that stuff. Are you finding, Mark, that in those circles, people are with the cap and all that? Is this good for the league? Are they happy about this? It feels like it's been a little bit more difficult to operate for some GMs this summer.
Yeah, if you don't thread the needle on your projections, your financial projections, and your roster projections moving forward, you get stuck. You can get stuck in neutral. Like, getting stuck in neutral is pretty much the norm, unless you're, Sam Presti, who had things fall perfectly for them and their projections with their young roster and their experience and their payroll. But even with them now, Jason, the mortgage note is due, man. You saw the amount of money and checks they wrote, right? So, yeah, and then the other side of the coin is you can't be balling on a budget. You can't have champagne dreams and a, bologna sandwich budget. So that doesn't work. I think that in this environment, you're going to see a lot more roster building 1 through 7 or 8, as opposed to top heavy rosters of guys who are always commanding the max. I think that's the next evolution. I think you're going to have star players on their respective teams being asked more frequently to take less than the max, not 100% of it, maybe 90 or 85% of it, to make room for roster building. I think that might be the next trend. Unless you're one of those franchises that just says, hey, I'll write a blank, repeater tax, they call it, right? I'll just write it 3-1, whatever it is. Boom, here.
Yeah. Not many of those. And I think to your example,
No.
I don't know this for a fact, Mark, but it felt like that as an example might be Memphis. Look, they like Ja, they like Jaren Jackson, they probably liked Bane, but I don't think they wanted to pay 3 guys that kind of money and then, hey, let's move one of them and sign the other 2. And that might be kind of the norm going forward.
Yeah. You're going to have to, as a general manager, move forward, find guys who outperform their contracts early and then make a decision later, So that's kind of the way it is. I guess grudgefully I like it. Yeah. Because it brings on, we've had 7 different NBA champions now in 7 seasons. So that's one side of it. The other side is dominance in pro sports with teams kind of sells too. Like dynasties sell too. The Bulls, the Warriors, the Lakers, those are sexy too. So I don't know. Some people like vanilla, some people like chocolate, some like strawberry, some like Neapolitan. Hey.
Yeah. Well, the league literally has experienced both of those here in this last decade. They had Warriors, Cavs 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
And now we're at 7 champs in a row. If you were to, you're in Vegas, so it's a place where people do bet. If you were to, and I know you said stay away from the tables.
Yeah.
But if you were looking at that, would you predict an 8th different champion, or I guess in this case a repeat from OKC or one of those other 7 kind of keeping this, I guess one of those other teams as well.
OKC seems to be on another level right now.
Yeah, they do.
But a year ago at this time, we were all saying that about the Boston Celtics too.
Yeah.
We really were. I mean, they were top 5 in offensive and defensive rating and dominated Dallas. They dragged them in the finals and won it in 5 games. So, all it takes is an injury and we're back to an open competition again. I think I think in the Eastern Conference, it's really wide open.
Yeah.
Like, there's Cleveland that's out there a little bit, but then everybody else has a shot, especially with Tatum probably out for most of, if not all of next year. And, Atlanta's much improved. They might be a team to watch in the East, but the West is so competitive. By the time you make it to the playoffs, guys are running on fumes.
Yeah.
I would bet that we're going to see. I don't know how it's going to happen or unfold, Jason, but as good as Oklahoma City is, I'm going to bet that there's going to be an 8th different champion.
Yeah. I kind of feel it too. All right, last one for you as we're talking with Mark Jones. Mark, I don't know. I know the league's going to study all this. There'll be a deep dive into all the research. I hope it's just rotten luck, but anything to the Lillard, Halliburton, Tatum. I mean, these are superstars with these Achilles injuries. That it's awful. I hate it for these guys. I want guys to play every game. There's the crowd that's like, hey, let's rest these guys. So anything to it, or just kind of some rotten luck here?
I think it's just an aberration. I just think it's rotten luck because, as Adam Silver pointed out, they're looking at some of the data. They didn't have nearly the number that they did this year. And I don't even have a theory on it. I just think it's rotten luck. I do know that my one guess would be, Jason, that, I'm in the gyms all the time in the summertime and, watch all the guys work out year round almost in fields. They're in the gyms. Like I see Jeff Green and Emmanuel Quickly pretty much every day in Miami down in the gyms, and they're there at 8:00 in the morning working out and then come back for a lift at night and get up shots. And that cumulative wear and tear at some point has to take a hold of your body. And I just think sometimes guys may play too much. I do. I think it's a wear and tear thing. That's my amateur orthopedic surgeon opinion. But guys have so much mileage on their bodies by the time they're even 24 now when they come into the league, with kids training year round and, AAU basketball. And I don't think AAU basketball is the boogeyman like a lot of people. I love it. But, guys play so much because it's so competitive. And by the time these kids come into the league even at 23, 24, they've got some hard mileage on them. So, yeah.
That's probably as good of a thought and take on that as I've heard. Well, Mark, we appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the rest of your time in Vegas. Try to stay cool, and let's see if the Kings can get that 3rd Summer League championship.
Hey, man, I'd love them to see some rings on their fingers when they leave Las Vegas. That'd be great. Jason, thanks for having me. Keep up the great work, man.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, light the beam. That's right. Mark Jones joining us from his hotel there in Las Vegas. We appreciate that. The voice of the Kings, voice of the NBA, and taking his time after his workout, just jogging outside in Vegas at 103 temperature. That guy's a machine. Absolutely appreciate him. Thank you for him joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed his interview there. Like we always